I'm Chris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Joining me is Stephen Johnson of the Daily Memphian. We're going to talk some Memphis Tigers basketball and hopefully some get a background of you two, man. Some AAC men's basketball as well. And who knows, man, I may throw a curveball and then about this realignment talk too, man. You know, we're basketball people, but, it impacts us as well.
Yeah, for that.
First off, thank you for joining me, man. How are you?
Hey, doing all right, man. I always appreciate the invitation. Really look forward to this.
Now, how long have you been where you are right now, man? This is kind of new for you, right?
Yeah, I got here. So I'm a native Memphian. So I'm from Memphis. I started working with the Daily Memphian last year, kind of in the middle of the pandemic. I started off as a football writer. And this actually last month, July, I was officially moved over to the basketball beat.
Okay, so you work with Danielle Lerner for a little bit then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Danielle, that's my girl. She did great work here. Great work.
So, yeah, I interviewed her last summer when she was there, and I had her on a radio spot when she moved here to H-Town. So, yeah, so cool. All right, small world. All right, man, so you're the beat writer for Memphis Tigers basketball. Kind of some big news happened for the fellas, for the squad in the last few days. So just talk about a new addition to the team coming up this year.
Well, Memphis, in my mind, was already having a strong team. I think before the big news that came out on Friday, they would probably be maybe right behind Houston in kind of terms of the preseason pecking order. But for the people who didn't, I guess maybe didn't follow closely, they added a commitment from a five-star Jalen Duren. He was the number one player in the class of 2022, reclassified to 21, and now I believe he's like top 5 still. So that was a major pickup for Penny Hardaway and the staff. He was a guy that was one of those guys I think before the name, image, and likeness stuff, I think he was going to go pro. He was considering the G League. He's considering the NBL down in Australia, who reportedly offer him close to $2 million. So I think it was a huge commitment, not only for Penny Hardaway and the Tigers, because they truly needed another center. They lost Musa Sisse to Oklahoma State. But I think it was also a big commitment for the sport in general, because now you might have guys like Jalen Duren and Imani Bates is another guy we might talk about later. If more of those guys are staying in college basketball, which I think the new NIL stuff will do, then that will only make college basketball better, because you keep those stars in March Madness kind of in those programs or whatnot. When it seemed like I think maybe last year that the pendulum was kind of swinging towards the G League, but I think the NIL is kind of leveled out the playing field for colleges now.
Have you had a chance to see Jalen play at all? Just what have you heard about his game from people you trust?
Well, I watched him at the Nike Peach Jam for it's basically the biggest summer AAU tournament of the year. If you walk away with a Peach Jam championship, I think it's safe to say your team was probably the best AAU team in the country, whether it be Adidas, Nike, whoever, Under Armour, whoever. So Jalen played with a Pennsylvania-based team final, led them to the championship. I think they won a crazy something like 8-1 or something like that. And I think he's a guy that can kind of do it all. He was double-double machine. He was a first-team all-tournament. He's a tenacious rebounder, great defender from what I've seen. Memphis prides itself on defense kind of just like Houston does. And I think for Memphis, he's also a guy that for them that can kind of create shots outside of the post. He's a great rim runner. He's a great finisher at the basket. He's an underrated passer. And during the Peach Jam, he was constantly facing double teams, and every time he came, he never seemed flustered. I didn't see a lot of turnovers. He normally found the open man. So I think that's encouraging. Memphis brings back a good amount of returning experience, especially shooters. So I think he's going to mesh well, and he's kind of one of those missing pieces to an already talented roster.
Have you had a chance to speak with Coach Penny and assistant coach Larry Brown about Jalen yet?
Not yet. We talked to Penny, I think, a day or two before Jalen committed. So we'll probably meet with him in the coming weeks. But I can tell you right now that he's ecstatic. Memphis has been recruiting him the whole time, but it wasn't until maybe June or so that Memphis really started surging, and they hosted him for an official visit. So they went from maybe the dark horses to the favorite after the official visit at the end of June. So I know Penny's ecstatic. Like I said, the center was a big point of emphasis for them. And now I think they bring in Chet Holmgren at Gonzaga is probably the number 1 center, but I'll probably put Duren at number 2 right behind him. So they got a great pickup.
What do you, in your opinion, what does Larry Brown add to the staff and the program?
Well, I think with a guy like Penny, like you're so successful, obviously you're rich. I think it's important to surround yourself with people that you respect that can kind of offer that pushback. And obviously, he played with Larry Brown for a season. He's been trying to get Larry Brown on staff since he was originally hired at Memphis. So this was a guy he really wanted to bring in. And regardless of some of Larry's history, when you bring in, he's the only coach to win an NBA and a NCAA championship. His experience he just brings so much to the table just in terms of experience. We know he coached Allen Iverson and those Detroit Pistons teams. So there's so much he can bring. And I think specifically on the court, Memphis's offense is kind of lagged behind his defense. I think you bring in a great mind like Larry Brown. I think you'll see Memphis kind of take a jump in that area, just finally having on staff. And I think most importantly, he's going to continue to push Penny Hardaway to grow. And he's a guy that maybe Penny will be comfortable deferring to him in terms of game plan if, the Tigers are struggling or something like that.
And Larry Brown, LB, is known for being hard on point guards. Mm-hmm. So who does that impact on the Tigers basketball team?
Well, honestly, right as it stands now, the point guard position is kind of maybe the only question mark. Alex Lomax is the only true returning point guard. They brought back Tyler Harris, who's undersized. He's in the point guard body, but he's really more of a shooting guard. You know how that goes. Now, Lester Quinones is another guy that can run points. So those are the three guys I think will be man in the one. Jonathan Lawson's a freshman they also signed who could play time there. So those four I think will be kind of maybe Larry's direct focus. And they need to play well at the point guard spot. They have all the weapons, big man, shooters, wings, scorers. They have all those. So now they just need a guy that can I don't even necessarily think they just need great point guard play. If you can just give somebody that can just keep that offense rolling, make sure everybody gets their touches and avoid those 5 to 7 minute droughts that have kind of plagued Memphis these last few years, then I think I think this team can really do a lot of special things this year.
And avoid the live ball turnovers because that drives coaches nuts.
Yeah.
So for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is Memphis done with this class?
I honestly do not. I've spoken to a few sources that believe Memphis is in a great spot to land Imani Bates. Imani Bates was also, like I said earlier, was in the class of 22 with Jalen Duren. And for the longest, he was the number one player. There was a lot of hype around him. Next LeBron James, next Kelvin Durant. It's kind of simmered a little bit, and maybe he's gone from just being a generational recruit to maybe just being a special. But either way, he's a dynamic player. He's a walking bucket, as I would say. He's drawn comparisons to KD, Paul George. I think he might be, in terms of NBA potential, he might be the best prospect in the country still, regardless of classification. So right now it's looking like Memphis is in a really good spot to land him, and that will make, I think, Memphis one of the most talented teams, if not the most talented team in the country going into next season. And
I think Imani and Jalen are friends, on how close, but they know each other.
Yeah, they played together for a stretch. They didn't play together at the Peach Jam. Imani played with Team Final for a stretch of the Nike AAU season. I read one story that he was there on the sidelines when Team Final was in the championship. So like I said, I don't know how tight they are. Jalen said him and Imani have kind of talked about it, playing together and whatnot. So now with Jalen committed, when Imani released his new list, the only two programs they really shared was Memphis and the G League. So I think with NIL stuff, I think Imani was another guy that I was all but sure he was going pro. But now with the name, image, and likeness, knowing that you can make that type of money in college, still do March Madness, still get that college experience, I think Memphis is in a really good spot to land another 5-star.
And we're going to go ahead and put it out there. You and I are media. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are not fans of the teams we cover. Mm-hmm. So there's no bias one way or the other. We cover the AAC. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm going to ask you about this. I would like to see all the teams in the conference do well. Mm-hmm. I'm a U of H alum, but that has nothing to do with me covering U of H. Mm-hmm. So Memphis and U of H fans will see it completely different. It's like war. Mm-hmm. U of H fans hate Memphis. Memphis fans hate U of H. But they don't realize the respect that Kelvin Sampson has for Penny's program and respect Penny has for Kelvin's program. Mm-hmm. So I just think I'm looking forward to the matchups this season. Mm-hmm. They should be the last two games last two Sundays again in conference play, TV. But what's the vibe you're getting from fans, from folks in Memphis about the rivalry between Memphis hoops and U of H hoops?
I think for the most part, you got to kind of try to avoid Twitter because, everybody on Twitter is just so loud with their opinions and stuff. I think for the most part, it's a kind of a begrudging respect, and obviously you kind of touched on it. Kelvin Sampson has a lot of respect for Penny Hardaway's program, and I give props to Kelvin for that. He's kind of been one of the most vocal supporters of Penny, even though Penny is arguably his biggest rival. If Memphis is doing well, they could kind of impede on what Houston is doing. Kelvin still has never been shy about handing out praise to Memphis, and I know Penny has a lot of respect for Kelvin Sampson, and I think in the way he wants his teams to kind of emulate what we saw from kind of Houston last year. I think Jalen will help that. We know Houston was just so tenacious on those boards last year. Great defensive team. They had guards that can make timely shots. So I think for Penny, when he looks at Houston, he sees a team that he wants his guys to kind of hopes his guys can kind of turn out and beat. And obviously Houston had that Final Four run. So I think it's a begrudging respect. I don't think there's like when it comes to Kentucky, Memphis fans, nothing but hate. For obvious reasons. Louisville, nothing but hate. I would even say Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati's kind of fallen on hard times, there's still a strong dislike. But with Houston, it was tough losing the way Memphis did last year, so I'm sure that stings. But I think overall it's more of a I got to give it to them. They're nice type of respect and more than dislike, if that makes sense.
You didn't mention Tennessee?
I understand. Look, I'm a native Memphian. If there's one time where the Memphis fandom might come out, is when talking about Tennessee, just because I could go on and on about that. But yeah, Tennessee is right up there. The cultural differences from being all the way up in East Tennessee all the way down to Memphis, Tennessee is just man. Yeah, if you want to get some Memphis fans riled up, and Penny got riled up at Rick Barnes 2 years ago, the first time they played, they played in a neutral site in Nashville, so that's going to be a war as well too. It's
similar here in Texas with U of H and the Longhorns up in Austin.
Oh yeah,
that's disdain. It's don't even talk about it. It's just if you want to light a match, sort of fire, just like that match. Talk about the Longhorns here in Houston. There's no question. All right, man. How long have you been in media?
I've been doing, honestly. So my first writing gig itself was actually I was blogging in middle school about Memphis, just like Houston is like a basketball hotbed for top prospects. So I was doing that in middle school. I worked for my high school paper as a senior in high school. Then I really say in college, I was freelancing, did an internship with Vibe magazine, kind of covering all the high school football teams across the Southeast. And I got my first official break right after college. Mike Wallace with Grind City Media, who works with the Memphis Grizzlies, NBA.com, kind of gave me my first shot as a correspondent. And just being able to get those articles, I was able to do a story on Penny Hardaway when he's still a high school coach on the Grizzlies, and I was actually at games and whatnot. Honestly, without that experience, man, I'm not sure where I would be right now. So I got to give a lot of love to Mike Wallace. And then from there, I worked for a year in Fulton, Missouri. You know how it is. You got to pay your dues.
Right.
Town of about 13,000 people. I was only there for a year, but honestly, I got my first big break when I went to Rochester, New York. I went there as an intern for an internship that lasted 1 year, a program, I should say, that lasted 1 year. No guarantee of a job, no guarantee there would even be an opening, but I just thought being in Rochester, the money was about the same. I thought it was worth taking the risk. And while I was there, call it luck or just call it being in the right place at the right time, a veteran that had been there for about 20 to 25 years just decided he wanted to step away and kind of go spend more time with his family. So I was in the right place at the right time. And so I was in Rochester for 2 years. And then I came back down here in the middle of the pandemic, came back home.
We're going to talk off air, man, because I do some guest appearances with some guys in Rochester, New York. So we might understand some of the same folks. So
yeah. Rochester look, man, it was cold, but and I'm happy to be home. But there are times I miss Rochester. The people there, the people I work with specifically were great, whether it be the TV people, radio, or the people I work with at the Democratic Chronicle. So it's cold, but I have nothing but good things to say about Rochester.
What's your overall thought on men's basketball in the American this coming season?
I think the league will be strong. I think this will be a league that can. I think Memphis and Houston are shoo-ins to get into the tournament as it stands right now on paper. I think 2 or more teams can kind of get into that mix. I got to really start digging into the other rosters, but I know Wichita State is a team that had a lot of a lot of things going on. I think they could be another team that maybe has a bounce back now. They have a little more stability. I'll be interested to see what Cincinnati does. They're another team that has a lot of off the court issues they need to have resolved. So I think if you see those programs kind of, I'm not sure what the word is. If those two programs kind of get it together, then I think that only makes the league strong. But when you got Houston and Memphis, I think it's one of the strongest leagues in the country, especially kind of outside of that Power 5 mix. I'm not sure if there's any, if you go past your ACCs and your SECs and whatnot, I'm not sure any program can boast two teams as talented as Memphis and Houston. So, and we know the conference. This conference isn't scared of anybody. They're not scared of Houston. They're not scared of Memphis. So even though those two teams are kind of the top dogs, I think there's still plenty of depth. There's still plenty of light about the other teams in America. And I think this is going to be a league that gets multiple teams, maybe three to 4 or 5 might be pushing it, but I think at least 3 teams will make it from the league.
I saw this morning, Joe Lunardi had this month's bracketology for the summer. He had Houston a 3 seed and Memphis a 4 seed, and Wichita State was among the first 4 out. So it's August. Yeah. That's about right. I think that's good for now. But just the fact you have Houston and Memphis, and that's 2 of the top 16. That bodes well for the conference, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Look, man, we know it's not going to be like Conference USA. I don't think Memphis or Houston is going to go through the conference slate undefeated. But if those 2 teams perform in their preseason expectations, it's only going to help the other teams in the conference who do happen to end up getting a win over Houston or Memphis, because I think if they perform at their level, both those teams should be within the top 20, top 15 throughout the year. So, if you're a Wichita, if you're a Cincinnati or a SMU, you get a win over Memphis, you get a win over Houston, that might be enough to kind of put you on the bubble, which for most of the teams in the league, that's all you can ask for once Selection Sunday comes around.
What are your thoughts, your opinion, NIL? Is it bad at all for college basketball, college athletics?
I don't think it's bad at all. Like, as for college basketball specifically, like I said, I think it's going to kind of turn that pendulum. We saw Jalen Green, RJ Hampton was another guy, and a couple other guys have kind of went through different paths. Jonathan Kuminga as well, whether it be G League, Australia, Europe. They went through these other avenues to obviously get paid and get developed and whatnot. But now with NIL, I think it's only going to make the college game stronger. Honestly, we can maybe see, as you know, in college basketball, there are a lot of guys who maybe aren't even projected first-round picks. They'll still put their name in the draft just because, they want to start earning. You don't want to be in college too long because it comes with the stigma. I think the NIL will not only kind of help the cream of the crop maybe go to college. Maybe you'll see more of those 20 guys maybe stay a year, because it's like, hey, man, I can make, depending on the market, I know Houston and Memphis are probably 2 really good markets. I can maybe make an extra $50,000 if I stay another year. I mean, I can maybe I can make close to 6 figures depending on the guy. So I think it's great for college sports. These athletes deserve some type of compensation for all the revenue they bring in. And now I think this is an avenue. I still might lean to the fact that I think the schools may need to actually pay them, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. So I think it's great for college athletics. I'm all for it.
And once again, I'm speaking with Stephen Johnson of Daily Memphian. All right, man, it's time for that elephant in the room. Realignment. Are you hearing anything about Memphis looking elsewhere, going elsewhere? Or what was your reaction when Texas and Oklahoma decided to bolt the Big 12 and go to the SEC?
Well, I was initially surprised because, of course, you're like, why would you? I mean, especially for Texas, you're like, why would you want to go to a conference with Alabama, LSU, and all these other guys? But I think, in a way, being in the SEC might be the only way they can really catch up to it. As you see with recruiting, and what recruiting is king. And we know a majority of the best players are in the Southeast. So that's always just going to be the advantage the SEC has. Year in and year out, if you look at the football rankings, it's probably Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and some mixture of Florida, and then you have an Ohio State. Now I think, and even Texas A&M now, who's in the SEC, and I think for Texas, they probably won't admit it, but they probably saw the success that A&M is having and probably said, look, man, 5 to 10 years down the line, if this still is the case, Texas A&M is going to be recruiting better than us. They kind of already are. Right. So I think specifically for Texas, this might be the only way they were going to try to catch up. In Oklahoma, I think it opens the door for them too to kind of get more of those prospects in the Georgia or Florida that maybe I'm not going to go to Oklahoma to play against, Kansas and Baylor, but Oklahoma against Florida, I can kind of come home. My parents can see me. So at first I was shocked, but then when I kind of just settled down and kind of just looked at the money, how it impact recruiting, I would say it makes sense. I'm not sure if it's good or bad for the direction of college football in general, but it'll be certainly interesting. And in terms of Memphis, I think Memphis and the rest of the conference are kind of in a holding pattern, trying to figure out, would it be best for us to try to absorb the rest of the Big 12, or do we need to join? In terms of nationally, I haven't heard much about Memphis kind of being one of those teams that might get added. I know Boise, Central Florida, Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and there's some other team off the top of my head that I'm missing. We're kind of rumored as maybe being teams that could jump into that Big 12. But in terms of Memphis specifically, I think if they get left out, it would kind of be, I think it would be a big disservice to any type of conference realignment, whether that's a Super AAC or Super Big 12. Obviously, you have a nationally recognized basketball program. Memphis has turned this football program all the way around, and they're investing in a lot of other sports. They're about to open up a new tennis facility, about to upgrade the Liberty Bowl. So Memphis is gearing up for realignment and making sure they put their best foot forward. Academically, the school is also taking steps forward as well, too. So I'm not sure where Memphis will fall in line. I know it's a program on the rise, and I think it would be beneficial. And, Memphis is a good market. It's one of the most passionate markets. If you look at NBA rates, Memphis is normally one of the markets that watches the most. So when it comes to sports, this is a market that loves it. So I think Memphis will have value to wherever they go. It's just a matter of, it's a lot that goes into it, academics one. So I think Memphis will be fine, but I'm really curious to see. I think the AAC might stay pat and just kind of see, hey, you guys can come over here. I'm not sure we're going to go over there, but we're good. So adding a TCU, a Baylor, or Iowa State, I think will be big at the conference if they're able to pull that off in the future.
I think Houston is a similar situation. Memphis City, the school itself has done a lot for improvements on campus, and football needs to pull its weight and do better. But I just wonder if ESPN, because the contract is tied to the conference for 10, 11 more years, if ESPN says, we can't have collusion or, whatever, if they say, look, you get TCU, get Oklahoma State, we'll tear up the contract, renegotiate, give you, $20 million a year per team, something like that. Because without that, why would Oklahoma State leave or TCU leave? Because the grant of rights, man, they'd have to pay a lot more to leave unless the Big 12 disbands. So it's the next 2 years, because I don't think anybody truly believes Texas and Oklahoma will be in the Big 12 for 4 more years. So I don't think that.
I don't see how they will work. Especially, I feel like this is going to get louder and louder. I think there's going to be. Won't be surprised, not an incident, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some more. We've seen some back and forth already between Baylor and Texas and just all the schools in general. So I don't think that saga over, and I'm pretty sure, just like you, that Oklahoma and Texas are going to try to find a way to get to the SEC sooner than later. But obviously, if you add those teams, or if you're Memphis and Houston and you go to the Big 12, I think those programs can really take off, because I think fanatics who are kind of really deep into the business of it understand how much that money makes a difference. But for the common fan, that TV money can be the difference. And I'm not saying Memphis or Houston is going to turn into Alabama or LSU overnight, but if you have that funding and now you can kind of go toe-to-toe consistently with your Power 5 counterparts. For Memphis, it will be Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Tennessee. For Houston, it would be TCU and Baylor. If you're kind of on equal footing, obviously we know Memphis and Houston are markets that young African-American athletes would probably love more so than your typical college town, and that matters. So I think, like I said, it will be big for both programs. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think Houston's going to get left out of anything, whether it be getting an invite to the Big 12 or whatever. Memphis is in a more interesting situation. They have the on-field, on-court success, but I guess do the other outside factors make them attractive to a Big 12 or whoever else is going to come knocking to try to add teams to their conference?
I'm going to close it out with you, Stephen Johnson. Have you heard anything about the conference, the American, having an in-person basketball media day in October?
I haven't heard. They kind of bummed me out a little bit. They had the virtual one last week, I believe. So honestly, it'll probably depend on COVID numbers. I imagine if they did have something in person, it will probably be somewhere in Texas, maybe. And as we know, COVID cases haven't been. The numbers aren't as good in certain parts of the country. So honestly, maybe by next month. But if I had to say so right now, I would lean to maybe them doing virtual. I'm hoping they do in person, man, because I still haven't. I've been a college beat writer this is my second full year doing it full time. I still haven't really gotten to have the full experience of going to the media days. Didn't really travel last year. So I'm hoping they have it in person, but I think it's about 50-50 right now.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And I've been doing this a long time, probably longer you've been around. But in-person media days, they're just different. Fans kind of bash us about what's so important about meeting face to face.
That interaction, man, just being that. I would say that's been the most difficult thing for me, is just kind of trying to build trust and build those relationships over Zoom or Twitter DMs when you're trying to reach out to people. It's just different when you can look somebody in the eye, shake their hand, and they can just kind of, I guess, get a measure of you, if that makes sense. But you can't really get that on Zoom.
Right. All right, Stephen, man, thank you very much. If we have an in-person media day in October, hopefully I'll see you there.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
If you have to wait until March or whenever the first matchup will be between U of A to Memphis, hopefully I'll see you there. So one of these ways, we'll meet eventually, man. Stephen Johnson, the Daily Memphian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, man. You take care.
You too.